This is the Kicker Q-Class 1005. Now one of the cool features about it is this is put on with magnets. Pops off. You can flip it whichever direction you want. In this case, this is going to be facing the back, so this is the direction we want to put it. A couple things about this amplifier. It is a DSP amplifier and a standard amplifier. It's one of the only amplifiers that works like that. If you never plug this into a laptop, you have all the standard controls that you would on an amplifier. It has 12 volts, DC offset, and audio sense. High level, low level input. It takes a 10 volt high level input, sub input, meaning amp 2 or subwoofer as far as if you just want to plug the RCAs in. Sub control, gain, crossover between 40 to 180 hertz. Bass boost, fader control on and off for your rear inputs or amp 2. Gain control, high pass, crossover, also variable between 40 to 180 hertz. Gain control for the front amp, high pass, crossover, same as the rear. And then you have this guy right here, which is the USB. When you plug this USB in, this wakes the amplifier up and automatically activates the DSP. But if you never plug it in, it'll just act like a normal 5-channel amplifier. Over here you have all your trouble lights, service, under voltage, over voltage, thermal, and over current. Then the power light is over here, and the lock light is here. That has to do with the DSP. On the other end of the amplifier, you have screw down style terminals where you can put ferrules in, 6 RCA inputs. The IQI, this is an output to go off if you want to run multiples of these amplifiers and connect them over Bluetooth. It also allows you to do your settings via Bluetooth. You can use an iPad. With this IOI connection, you can do up to 4 amplifiers on one piece of software. This is something that most amplifiers won't do. It allows you to use one DSP software to control multiple amplifiers. Right now we have a 5-channel. If he wanted to up this system and go full active on his rear, he could pick up the 4-channel. We could add it into the software and still use one piece of software to control both amplifiers. It is one of the coolest features of the Q-Class amplifier line. Bass controller located right here. Screw downs. There is 4 screws in the box. I strongly recommend using them because these are really long and it's kind of an odd screw. I got a tape measure. Let's start cutting some plastic and figuring out how we're going to get this thing up underneath the passenger seat. There's a pretty decent amount of room up underneath the passenger seat. The amplifier can go right in. The problem is that there's a giant floor mat that also goes here in these cars. What I did in a previous version was I suspended this amp up into the seat like this. It sat about an inch off the ground. He really liked that and would like to do the same thing in his car. We're gonna build the same thing. What we need is a piece of plastic that goes underneath this seat bolt here, comes down and across, hovers across the air, lifts back up and bends underneath here. 2 slight S-bends. It would be nice if we could just make a piece of plastic that was straight across, but we're not going to get that lucky. So I'm going to start with a 22-inch piece, which is a little bit longer than the distance across here. That way I'll have room to do the bend. We need to make it so that we can put a kick stopper in front of this amplifier. And, you know, obviously have enough room to do wiring on the back side, which there isn't a lot of, that's for sure. I'm going to start with a piece that's 12 by 22. I'm going to use some 1/4 inch. I need it to be real rigid. I'd like to go 1/8 inch, but I just don't think it would hold and it would wobble and bounce up underneath the seat. I'm gonna head over to the table saw. After a couple trips back and forth to the saw, this is what we've ended up with. It sits on here, sits on here. I have to drill the 2 holes for the bolts. It's suspended off the ground. We have plenty of room here, hopefully for that floor mat to fit underneath. It clears the area here, and I'll have the room here to attach my stopper panel so that you can't kick these controls. That means we can take this over the bench and start getting the wiring done. I went ahead and got the amplifier mounted to the board, and I added in this back kick panel here. It's installed with 2-inch Allen head screws. Then I put a couple of these wood style nut certs into the back that kind of has the teeth that will dig into the product and make it nice and tight as opposed to just screwing it into this. Today we're going to do wiring up the amplifier a little bit different than we normally do. I've already dressed up all of the wiring that's going to go into the amplifier, and I thought I'd kind of explain what it is we're using in each step of the way. This amplifier goes sub, power, RCA, speaker. It's a little bit different. Most of the time this would be over here with these. This amplifier, it doesn't work like that. This part here and this is going to go to a factory hole that's located in front of them. These are going to go this way and up the center console. The hole for the power wires over in the driver's footwell. That means I want to start with these and get them out of the way. These are going to drill through this and go through another hole that's located on this side, and it's not on the top. This hole is located on the top. When drilling a hole through plastic, go halfway through on the top and then the other half on the bottom. It'll do two things. One, it'll clear off all the excess burrs that are on both sides, and because when you're using a step bit, it will keep the hole diameter the same on both sides. For this install, we're going to be using Stinger red power wire covered in the flexible loom with our logo attached to the end. This heat shrink we get from Wire Care. We use a 3-to-1 shrink. That way it will cover more than just 4 gauge. It'll also work on 0 gauge. When using ferrules, it's easier just to pull the screw all the way out than try to guess at where it is and did you get it all the way up. The ground is done up the same way, braided loom. On the ground, you kind of guess where you need to stop the loom. It doesn't necessarily have to go all the way to the end. More than likely, we're going to cut it somewhere in this area here. One other wire that is going to go over into the center console is the base knob. When using zip ties, you have to kind of figure out a couple things. One, where is this amp board going to be? Is it going to be mounted on something flat? Is there going to be gaps underneath it? Like, is it going on carpet? The reason why the heads of the zip ties need to go somewhere. Obviously, putting them on the bottom where you can't see them is way more appealing. It keeps it nice and clean. However, if this is going to be flush up against something or something's going to be moving on the back of it, you don't want to have all these little 1/8 inch zip ties hanging out. It can cause you some grief. So you have to do a little bit of thinking beforehand. With the power wire done, I'm going to move on to the subwire. For the subwire, we use dual 12 gauge runs, meaning there's a red and a black 12 gauge under here. I like doing that because it makes it more flexible and easy to run over long lengths as opposed to just really thick 12 gauge wire. Finished it in braided loom all the way to the end. This is the end that's going to go into the subwoofer enclosure. Then we put ferrules on the end of the wire so when we tighten them down, it'll stay nice and together. When tightening up the speaker wires on the amplifier, don't go crazy, don't over tighten them. You can crush and cut through the ferrule. Pay attention to the pressure. We know this wire is going to end up going this way and turn. However, we don't want to drill all these holes yet. We want to wait until we have these. Might have to drill multiple holes and put in multiple zip ties at once. One other thing you want to do is when you do take out the screw and put the wire in the hole, look into the hole and make sure that the wire or the ferrule is underneath where this is going to screw down all the way, not just the tip. The remote turn on is also a primary 18 gauge wire. We covered it in sheeting. We only went in about 18 inches. This part of it is going to be bundled with another wire and be taped the rest of the way. That leads us to the RCAs. For the RCAs, primary wire twisted together, twist them together. The white covering here is heat shrink. We needed Y connectors because this amp is going to be a 3-channel amp. 1 and 2 are going to be 1 channel, 3 and 4 is going to be another channel. For this, we used the Stinger X1 2-line, soldered them together, and then color coded them to match. There's a white one and then a matching gray one. The subwoofer is going to be fed off of the combination of the two. The remote turn on wire is going to pair up with these. That's why I hadn't finished that. I needed to figure out where these are going to be lined up. When zip tying RCAs into place, make sure you push them into the amplifier. You want there to be room so that the pressure is on the amplifier. You don't ever want to make them tight so that they want to pull out. Leave a little extra S at here so that they're in there nice and tight. When you have 4 holes like these, start on whatever side you want your zip tie end to be on and work your way the opposite way. That way the end doesn't cover the hole that you have to run through. What you end up with is these 3 in a row here, just like this, of an open hole zip tie. You start here and you work your way across that way. And if you notice, the rest of these are following a similar pattern. When you have just 2 wires, like we do in the case up here, we have one on one end and we have one on the other end. They're on the outsides like this. And then everything on this side of that is the zip tie ends will be on this side. Everything on this side will be on this side. It's a little crazy, I know, but it just kind of goes with the flow. And then if it's going to be a top to bottom, you have to pay attention where those are going to be too. The last wires we need to get into place are the speaker wires. These are 16 gauge Stinger wire covered in braided loom. We have our smaller 3-to-1 shrink wrap here, ferruled ends. What we've done on this install, all the speaker wires have the gray ends, so you have gray end, gray end, gray end. Of course, the power wires have their matching colors, and remote has its matching colors, so power is pretty basic structure. And then signal, just like the RCAs, when you're putting in your zip tie on the speaker wire, add in, you know, a little bit of an S. That'll make, if you have to pull them in and out, a lot easier. Having a little extra towards the amplifier does make your life a little better. Finished off all the extra zip ties that need to be done across the front here. The hole for this wire to come through is right here. I wanted to turn these, turn this one, and have everything come to this end right here. The last thing to do, tape up the parts that need to run together. For that, we are going to be using the exterior Tessa tape. There's 2 types. There's interior fuzzy fleece and exterior that you have to cut with scissors. I like using this. Slide the amplifier forward, separate our parts. This case, the way the wires ran. Remote turn on, which we're going to be using the DC offset built into this, but we always run a remote turn on just in case something doesn't work. We also ran an accessory out of the factory radio. It had one, so we put one in just in case we need to connect this. It is going to run up with the speaker wires because that is where the connection would be made. I'm a big fan of zip ties, as you guys know. However, sometimes running zip ties into where carpet is can be a hassle because these get caught on the carpet as you're pulling them. Make sure you have a good set of flush cutters to minimize that and also to keep yourself from getting cut. Just because you're taping a wire doesn't mean the fun stops there. You can just go woo down the road. As it's zip tied here where you have these 2 and the one on the bottom, you create this pyramid. Try to keep that same shape all the way down, so don't let the wires twist in on top of each other. It makes the bundle bigger. If you keep them all in order as you're wrapping the tape, it keeps that bundle as thin as possible. Takes a little bit longer, does a much nicer job. When wrapping the Stinger 16 gauge, what makes it really nice is it's square on one side, round on the other. It makes it real easy to stack on top of one another. It also makes it really easy to stack side by side. If you're trying to do something that's thin, you could stack it side by side and tape it. For this, we're just going for small and in a bundle. We'll stack it on top of one another and just take it all the way down. When wrapping, when you get all the way to the end, and you got to kind of guess how far you want to go. You don't want to have to go so far that you cut it here and you have to unwrap all this and you waste tape. Just get it as close as you think you're going to need it to, because you can always go back and add more on to the end if you need to. With the wire all taped up and all protected and all covered in nice safe material, the amplifier is ready to get into the car. Amplifier wires are ran. This is that big hole we were talking about. So they come in here, they go up, and they're coming out right here. We're gonna get them up into that crossover that we're gonna put in the dash. The rest of the wires run up this way through the center console and into where Fernando's at now, hooking up the battery. Well, after a little bit of struggle, pushing and shoving, hanging out in this corner of the car, we have the crossovers all wired up. The last step is to mount them in place, and using these inserts that we've used makes this so much easier. Snap that in, and there it is. Get the glove box back in. The rest of the car, Fernando has put back together. The back seats in. The subwoofer is sitting in place. We're starting to clean up, get all his stuff that we've taken out, all his wire, all that other fun stuff into a box. Makes it nice and easy. One last piece. Once we get that done, it's plugging the amplifier in to do a software update. The floor mat, as you can see, goes in rather nicely. The laptop is sitting here. We just need to get off the end plate. we're looking for this, which is the USB. If you're putting in a DSP, always check to see if there's a firmware update on it before you start getting into it. Most of them, when they launch, will tell you, check for firmware. The next step on any DSP is going through whatever setup they have. The Q class, you do the amplifier setup where you label the amplifier. You tell it what the channels are doing. In this case, we're bridging all the channels. Tell it where the subwoofer is going to be fed from. One cool thing about the Q class is it allows you to test speaker outputs, your channel, make sure that they're playing. Like next, a 10-inch woofer. Next, the last step they ask is for the delay. 40, passenger side.
59.
When entering your time alignment distance, read your owner's manual and find out what they're looking for. There's a couple different things. Some software allows you to enter in the true distance, meaning in this case 40, whatever this was, whatever that was. Some DSPs want the subtractive distance. So if that's 40 and this is 59, they actually want you to enter 19. Some want you to go and figure out milliseconds of delay, which is even more fun. Make sure you read your instructions and find out what they want. And of course, if it's not in the instructions or if it's not clear to what you're trying to do, call the manufacturer and ask them. But for us, the system is all set up and ready to go. This is going to be a 3-channel front stage upgrade system where we are going to concentrate on the passenger and driver doors only and the subwoofer. And the rears are going to be controlled through the fader on the radio, so they're going to be playing lower, and they're only really there for effect. When working with DSP, is there's always going to be a way to save the file. I like to use the date and the color of the car, usually because there's only one car that color that day in the bay. But what you want to do is save as many times as you can. Anytime you make a crucial adjustment, save it. Save, constantly save. When you do the passenger side, save it. When you do the driver side, save it. When you mix them together, save it. When you do the subwoofer, save it. Anytime you think you're gonna disconnect it, save it, because nothing sucks worse than and it all goes bye-bye. With this up to date now, and it's saved, I'm gonna take this over to the bench. Fernando's already got the RTA in. We're gonna start listening to it and see what it sounds like and what we need to move around to make it sound better. We have the DMRTA listening to the car. We have the software up. We're looking at the sub channel right now. Super ear Fernando is in the car listening to some of his foo-fooey music. Of course, the real funny thing is I don't know why I'm standing out here when I could just be sitting in the passenger seat listening to it. So the million-dollar question is, since this is one of the first videos that we've shot, the shallow mount Virtus
Nanos
carbons. Yeah. What do they sound like? Are they awesome? Is it just a sham? What is going on here? And it's not an easy question to answer, and here's why. They sound amazing, and I mean that with like non-fanboy love. What do you think?
Yeah.
Where they just kind of like, they want to produce mid-bass, and they do it, but then there's just like, you hit this little bump, and then they stop. Which is to be expected from a speaker that's this thin. But the
performance is...
The drum that you get, that dump, sound, every time. Every time, it'll do it. It'll just, it's like, dang, it's that fat bass sound, that
yeah.
It's not gonna do that. But my guess is that's what a subwoofer's for. And we have the 110 L7 in the ported factory box in the back kicking it. Are they all that in a bag of chips? He's shaking his head yes.
Yes.
There you go. I think they are.
Dude. Awesome.
So I can only assume the coaxial is just gonna be as exciting. This is a really nice sounding system. It sounds fabulous. It was, yeah, it's just like, loving it. These tweeters, the Virtus, it's very nice, very musical sounding speaker. I'm a fan, so I could just go on and on with all these cool things. You don't have to convince me. But with that, we hope you guys enjoyed this little 911 trip, this little fun jaunt we did, visiting back to the Honda Accord. It was fun. It was good.
Nice. Yeah.
We need to end this video so that you guys can get to bed or whatever it is you need to do. Fernando, if you please.
On to the next one, guys.
You guys have a great night as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.